Okay, let's call this meeting to an order. This is the Measure J Commission on October 17th, 2019. And I will have Ariana do roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Vice Chair Craig,
Here.
Commissioner Feder, Chair Gazan,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner LeBranch,
Here.
Commissioner Lass,
Here.
Commissioner Robin,
Here.
Commissioner Soto.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Bernstein, would you like to kick us off?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do we, the acceptance of the agenda, do we motion for that? I do have one thing that I want to point out on the agenda. Discussion under new business 5C, discussion on new hotspot projects and outreach. I was just a little confused on that. I didn't know if that was maybe misconstrued as hotspots might be potentially our next project for community projects. This would be the appropriate time to discuss. Okay, yeah, just,
Based on the last conversation during the commission member comments
yeah.
for discussion on the new community hotspot project.
I know
So
that we
can add
wanted
that.
to discuss community potential community projects and possibly outreach, so we can, if everyone's okay with that, do
Yeah.
that under that line item. Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the agenda with my little change? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Great. And then the approval of the minutes, which were sent out with the agenda for this meeting. Do we have a motion for approval? Second? Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's passed. All right, this is the time for public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Measure J Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes for each speaker. Do we have?
Mr. Boley?
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Alan Boley. I am the chair of the Parks and Recreations Commission. I came here today first to thank you for giving us the funds for our restroom projects in the parks for the next year. We have already begun working with the architects and are making a template of one that will be repeated in the others as we go through. At our last meeting, we discussed it with Marcus and Dr. Reddy, and they suggested that we let you know we need more money. We have a couple projects that we had hoped to do. One is a restroom outside here at the dog park. Once this building is closed, there's no restrooms for people to use at the City Hall. The other one is at James O. Jesse Center. Once the building is closed there, we have the outdoor fields and playgrounds and ballparks. We have no restrooms for them up there. We have talked to them and discussed different ideas of how we could do it. We may have a little bit of money left over in the 1.6 that we got for the upgrades, but with the accessibility that we have to do, it's going to stretch it a lot. So as Marcus and Dr. Reddy suggested that we come to you and let you know that a community project, look at us. We're here and we're needing some help in that area. If we keep our name out there to you, You remember us when you're starting to do things. Let us know what we got to do to work together and make it happen. Thank you.
Mr. Goins?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is John Goins. I'm here as a member of the Warm Sands Neighborhood Organization. And I wanted to let you know that our neighborhood submitted a community action request form. I have a copy of it sent around here to engineering on October 10th. And on the request, we asked for crosswalks on Ramon Road at Thornhill, Indian Trail, Calle Bronia, and Calle Amigo. And this form was signed by all board members of our neighborhood organization who live all across our neighborhood. So this is a very important item for us. And let me explain to you why. As an example, if you walk down Ramon or if you're on Ramon when the high school lets out or when school lets out, you see kids crossing at those bus stops without crosswalks. They have heavy book bags, they have instrument cases, and it's just dangerous. And at other times, you see elderly people who sometimes have to stop in the middle of the street at the turn lane before they can finish. So, it's an important item for us. So I know that there is a list of hotspots from the past that engineering is working through, and I believe that the majority of those are, if not completed, funded, and on their way. They're in the process. So we're asking that we be added to your next list of projects because I want to fix this road, and our neighborhood organization wants to fix this road before something really bad happens. I'm not here asking for a beautification project. I'm here to ask you to prevent a disaster from happening.
No more public comments.
Great. Thank you to both of those speakers. We appreciate you showing up. Welcome, everybody. I really don't have any comments, so I think we'll just move right to the city manager's report. Is that Mr. Fuller? You're going to let? You're deferring to them? Okay. So there's no city manager's report then?
So we'll report on projects as our time comes up. There is no city
Okay.
manager's report.
All right, got it. All right. Well, then we'll move on to the finance director's report. Hi, Nancy.
Hello. I never know what page number this is. It's item 3, 1 of 5. So we look like we finished the year. The revised estimated actual, the unallocated new funds appear to be 1.74 million, 1.074 million. And in going through this year's comparables, we have September, there's a typo right here where it says June, but it should say September. We have 1.19 million over 921 over the prior year. The last two meetings, I included an attachment of the list of additional reallocated new funds, and this time I included them on your report. If you would prefer it the other way, let me know and I'll change it back to the attachment, but I thought instead of having additional pages to go back and forth, you would have it all right here. Does anybody have any questions at this time? And we'll go through some of the projects that we have completed. We have included a new, attached to this, there's new project listing we included, which includes all the projects since the beginning of Measure J. And we will keep updating these on a monthly basis for you. Any questions on this so far? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Engineering Joelle.
So this meeting is what is labeled as the true-up, where we talk about all the projects, all the funding that Measure J has given to projects over the years. So we can actually turn to page, I guess we'll call it item 3, 2 of 5, which is the beginning of the breakdown of all the funds that have been spent. Right. So actually, yeah, if you actually turn it sideways, it's going to be 1 of 4. So you can actually follow along from fiscal year 11-12, Measure J had or spent total 29,000. And then as the years progressed, the money kept on increasing from to 200,000 in fiscal year 12-13. Fiscal year 13-14, Measure J spent almost $6 million. Fiscal year 14-15, Measure J bumped to almost $12.5 million. 15-16, $6 million, 0.7, 16-17, 10.2. 18-19, we were at 7.6 million, and right now we're well underway at 140,000. If you go down, you can start seeing the categories where the money was spent in each one of those fiscal years. So the first category, I guess it is called project details by category. The first one is the downtown, and you can see the expenses as you follow from fiscal year 11-12 all the way to 19-20. Then you go down to Measure J streets, and you can see where we're spending our funds. The 4493 Measure J streets, we do reconstruction, we do overlay, slurry seal, and there's other minor projects, but most of the money is spent in the first three. Actually, it starts breaking down by year as well. So streets 14, 15, 18, 19, those are the names of the projects, but you can actually see by this spreadsheet how much money was spent in each one of the fiscal years for the reconstructions. Actually tied to that, if you turn to the very back of the supplemental handout that I gave, there's an actual colored exhibit at the very back. This was presented to council recently where we show the very first color handout map is fiscal year 13, and we call it City Project 1304. You can see there was a few projects that were done, a few streets in the city, and then the next sheet is the next two I guess you add the next project, which is Project 1404. And you keep on turning the pages, you'll see how Measure J over time has touched a large portion of the city. So, you got the other projects, 1304, 1404, 1501, 1601, and so forth. At the very end, you can see all the projects combined, give you a very good idea of what Measure J has done throughout the city.
I've heard, I've heard the number of miles of streets that have been paved. I heard a figure that since conception, we've paved 75 miles of street. Is that correct?
109 miles.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
109? Thank
This
you.
was recently revised, and as of September, 109 miles.
Thank you.
So on the sheet 204, 304, and 404, you could actually see, if you stack them up on top of each other, you can see all our projects, or the Measure J capital projects that are not street related. And you can see over time, it gives you a good, I guess if they're stapled, you can't really stack them up together, but you could actually, if you put them all together, you can actually see every year how many projects we did. And at the very beginning, we started with maybe about 10 projects. This other handout that I gave you, the very first sheet, shows you that in the fiscal year 12-13, we completed one project at, say, $12,000. And then from there, you can start seeing how the next fiscal year we completed more. And it pretty much all ties together with the list of completed projects and the spreadsheet that we provided. You can basically go back and forth and check and how the money was spent each fiscal year. So it's a lot of information. I don't know if you have questions at this time or you need any of us to explain the projects or any questions on the projects and how we put this together.
I have a question on the projects completed 2014-15. At the bottom, it says Measure J signs, $6,100. Yet last year, when we were getting ready for the picnic, we had to go to the construction yard to find 3 or 4 that were dirty. What happened to everything that we spent $6,000 on?
They were basically destroyed over time just because they wore out because they were on streets. They're not made of wood. They're more of like a heavy cardboard stock. And so they would just fly off. Some of them got hit by cars, vandalized or whatever.
I was only asking because when Commissioner Robin had given us a quote on some signage for the future, it was less than $2,500. And that was for like 50 signs. So I'm just wondering how $6,000 was spent.
Well, we could do some research and find out exactly what that money went for back then.
Okay, it just doesn't seem like $6,000 was spent on signs.
I will pull the invoice and see who we paid and pull the invoice and see what type of signs and how many we did get at that time.
Thank you,
I'll report to you at the next meeting.
thank you.
And just to follow up on that, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, for 50 double-sided signs that we just ordered, it was $1,359.
And that was for 50 of them.
50, but they're printed on both sides, so they're double-sided.
And they're small.
They're the ones that we put by the roadside when we're repaving.
So there's a large,
Intended as temporary.
Yeah. I mean, they're sort of like cardboard, but it's actually plastic. But
What size are they?
The signs that we ordered are like the ones that were being displayed at the picnic.
So that's like,
And they just delivered those yesterday.
so that's got to be like 2 feet by 3 feet.
But I know the last order that was placed was for a more quantity. I don't recall how many, but it was, I think,
Okay.
like 200. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are like the signs that were like 6 feet tall. You know, they were really big signs, but they were made out of the same material. They were just meant to put up at a site, and then they don't last very long. Because-
Joel, I have one question. So this is when the funds were spent, when the projects were completed, right?
Correct.
Did you notice any, like when was the average lag between when the funds were allocated versus when they were spent? Because I recognize it's sometimes like a year later, 2
Yeah, it
years
takes-
later, but.
It takes a while. I don't think I have a good metric on that, how long it takes between when Measure J gives us the money to do a project and when it actually gets done. If you see the spreadsheet that we provided, and you kind of get an idea as you're going down, you can see more and more money is being spent, but I don't have a true grasp of how long it takes for a project to get completed
Yeah.
once it's approved.
And the reason I ask is as we're kind of considering community outreach and gathering ideas from community members, it'd be helpful to have like some realistic expectations that we can share as to how long, from the inception of an idea from when that project actually comes to completion. Because sometimes people think like, oh, nothing happened, but it could be we've allocated it and it's just not going to happen for another year, right?
Right,
And
right.
so,
I think we were using, in other meetings, we were talking about park projects, and Don mentioned that when you start a project or when the idea comes up, it takes about, up to 3 years before from that idea to coming to Measure J to it getting funded and then actually coming to fruition. So you're generally looking at, from a concept to delivery, maybe 4 years truly, or if it's a really high-profile, really important project that needs to get done, then the timelines get pushed. But it's, it varies, I guess.
Yeah, I think it would depend on the project. I mean, you could look at the Wellwood, and it's not finished, and this project started 10 years ago. So it really depends on what the project is and the rules and regulations it has to go through and if there's funding or no funding. So I think the easiest one would be to take hotspots and look at the hotspot requests and then sort of see when those hotspots were done, but they were done over a period of time. But, you know, construction projects
Yeah.
can be really crazy, and roads can be the same way.
Yeah, I know by any means saying it should be done by X amount. I'm just saying we should be able to have the language to be
Right.
able to describe.
Right, if I were to set
community members.
expectations, I would
Right,
say if you
yeah.
have a project that you want to do, you know, you need to be prepared to wait maybe 3 to 4 years before it
Yeah.
actually gets completed. Obstacles, things can, you know, happen that make a project go faster or go, or
Yeah,
take
but
a
I do
long
like the
time.
idea of maybe the hotspots being a good kind of window to understand that better.
I'm not sure if this is the right time, Joel, but one of the things we've got listed down here is the Bollards Phase 1. I probably would like to find out a little bit more about what's been completed and is operational.
Right, right. Don and I, or I at least, we debated about whether we could put it on here as complete. The contractor did their work. The problem with the bollard was a manufacturer issue. The manufacturing of the actual bollards failed. The supplier has committed to providing new bollards that are actually hand actuated instead of the ones we had specified and installed. So the reason I put it here is the money was spent to install it, and the contractor did their work, but they are not functional as of today. I don't think I have a good a sense of when the contractor was working on getting us new bollards and installing them all at their cost. So we're not going to see any more funds being spent from Measure J. So I felt comfortable putting it here, and I knew I was going to put an asterisk and explain it. They're not done, and it got away from me, and I forgot to do it. But
So those are the ones around
The plaza, correct.
But they're at either end of the street as well, are they not? No. Where it
it's just in the
closes off?
plaza. It's just that.
It's just
As
on
it turns the corner.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought about it. I know I was going to get asked the question. So, so that's
Question.
kind of, yeah, go ahead.
Just to clarify, and I might have been reading while you or Nancy were speaking, completed project versus cash activity, the horizontal landscape
Right.
is cash basis spend. This is project effectively closed out.
Correct.
And in that fiscal year, it's recognized when it's done. So am I reading it correctly that way?
Right, yes.
It's really helpful.
Don pulled the information and,
Yeah, it mostly matches up. So when we stopped charging to that account, I considered it completely finalized. So
Thank you.
does it help? Yeah. And we're trying to how will we give the commission I'm trying to get away from the word true up because it's in an accounting term, but how we are transparent as to how projects are complete, the money where it's spent, and we can track it every year. Next year, you'll see the next fiscal year, and you'll see how the money was spent, and if more projects were completed in that next fiscal year. So I hope, I'm glad it helps. And I think this is an easily reproduced document and editable. So if you need information from here, I think finance is really good at doing pivot tables. I'm not, but they can create pivot tables to give you more information as you need it.
So we're hoping we put this together per your request. And if you think of any changes or you'd like to see anything different on this, please let us know. After looking at it right now, I thought maybe we could even actually put the total revenues received during that year. So we see what's come in and what was spent. So we have an idea of that also. So,
That considers the lag.
right, so if you have any other ideas, I'll add that if you guys wish to the next one. But if you have any ideas while reviewing this, feel free to let us know.
And thank you for, I think this is the clearest it's been since I've been on the commission. So it's very appreciated, and it's very easy to get it. So thank you. Any other questions?
And that pretty much concludes
Staff report?
staff report.
I did
Yeah.
have
Oh,
one,
go ahead.
maybe after the list of the completed, so there's project completed in fiscal year 1920, and then, I don't know if it's like a page break or whatever, but approved projects. And so that way you're kind of like moving things up as they are completed, but then we have an understanding as to what's on the docket next.
Yeah, so from this page where we have the
Right.
approved projects, maybe they jump onto this continuous list. And is this list something you want to see every other meeting, or we wait till the true up?
It would be great to keep seeing it, just to see what changes, though. It's only gonna be anything that finishes, right?
Yeah, it's only going to be the
last
very,
page that
right, the
will
really last page, and it'll be by dollar, so I don't know if it makes sense doing it, quarterly or not, or every other meeting, or maybe every 6 months, something that, once the commission gets curious about where the money is being spent.
Maybe at the end of the season, like in October and then right in May.
And that's, okay.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that too, but I guess, so, you've presented this in October, and that's great. And so the only thing I would suggest is if a project is completed out, let's say a project gets completed out in December, then I would want to know that and have that brought to us and update that in December, because that project's now complete. I don't know that I need to have a quarterly report of how much money has been pulled out of the fund because some invoice came in. That seems really a lot of work and not necessary. But as a project's completed, I think then it would be good to know it.
Right, okay, it makes sense. We have a sidewalk project that's starting, and we're having a pre-construction meeting. When that project concludes, I'll announce that we're done with the project, and
And add it to the list.
we'll add it to, of course.
Personally, I think that that's good, and then we get it again next year, which is fine. But if a project 50% done or 70% done doesn't necessarily guarantee that the next 25% is going to be done in the same speed that the first 70% was done,
I guess I was under the impression this is when it's completely done.
Right, so only unless something is complete do we need an update.
Okay.
And one more question. Did you like if I report every meeting and I go ahead and update this report for you? Because it's as of September 30th. And I could provide this to you like for October, November, since we're reporting 1920 year-to-date actuals. I can make sure that we report this to you. And so in October, you'll have through October 31st through 1920, and then the total throughout. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
This is very helpful.
I just wanted to add one more thing. So this list, there was a version of this on the city's website for the Measure J page previously, and then I was trying to emulate it, and then as I was reading through the weeds, I noticed that some fiscal years were projects that they were working on that year, and some were the completed projects, and there was no, it would jump, and there was no consistency. So what I did was stripped it all down to just completed projects. So if this wants to go back on the city's website, we could do that so that when you're reviewing materials at home, you could easily just go to the website and get it. And then as projects are completed, we could update it there also, as well as report to the commission here. But I just want to tell you, that's why it looks like this. I was trying to emulate what you've seen on the website, or what the public has seen on the website in the past, and, yeah.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Don. All right, thank you. Anything else for the staff? All right, moving on to new business, the communications subcommittee update. Whoever would like to update us?
Hi, we've been busy since the last meeting. We did a presentation to the 1PS group, and I think there were probably about 60 or so people there. Tend to be a lot of folks who are very, involved in their community groups, so a nice group for us to be speaking with. I want to thank Commissioner Robin for initiating the contact with Kathy Cohn and Denise Goolsby that got that all together. But I know that he's also kind of been spearheading a bunch of stuff related to using social media and using some of the city's websites and potential to do email blasts, all of which we can kind of, piggyback on without any direct expense to the commission. So thanks for that. Chair Gazan spoke, and it went very well. And you probably have seen this, that was kind of the impetus for developing this, but we do have extra copies. So if there's any meeting that you're going to and you need some, you can just speak to Ariana. And as you can see, we also included, because as a neighbor, they were all neighborhood groups, the streets that we're going to try to do this year, because everybody wants to know exactly what's happening in their neighborhood. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that Dr. Reddy was there, and I think it would be a great idea for us to invite him to join our next meeting. I think he's got some good ideas, and hopefully would be receptive. If he's busy next time, we can do it in two months, but I think that would be very helpful. Also before you, we promised to provide a budget for your consideration, which you can see, it was just handed around. We talked a little bit about it before with the signage. Commissioner Craig was talking about. The signage here has roughly, we've ordered the 50 double-sided, but it would be for, at some point, an order of another 50, plus some large project signs. So for example, with the renovations of the bathrooms, it might be nice to have a more long-lasting sign there to indicate that that's a Measure J project. And same thing if we end up doing some stuff with some of the fire stations, having something that's a little larger and a little more permanent might work well as well. In addition to that, printing, we've already spent some on this, but that comes in there. The concrete imprints we've talked about, and I know we're launching into some sidewalks, so I think there seemed to be a lot of support at previous meetings about using some concrete imprints. You get them. They have a little number plate that can be changed for the year, but other than that, you can use them indefinitely to indicate that Measure J participated in the funding for new sidewalks. In addition to that, we thought we'd explore this idea of the logos, which would be brass. They're about 4 inches across, and it would have some variation of the seal of the city with something about Measure J. We have to work out exactly what it's going to look like. But those are pretty much permanent, and they can be mounted in sidewalks, concrete walls, and basically they last forever. So that's something that we think might be a good thing to do. We've got 25 in here to just sort of see how it goes, and if people like them and if they work on future budgets, we might well want to expand that. So with that, I'd like to put this budget forward for consideration and adoption if everyone approves.
So a question, so these are rough figures for like the signage, because you're saying that we have looked at doing 50 of the double-sided signs. When you say small, are they small or are they?
They're the ones like we had at the picnic.
Yeah, so they're like about 3 feet tall.
But they're small compared to a big project sign.
Yeah, but they're about 3 feet tall by
2 feet wide about.
yeah, 20 inches wide or whatever. And so 50 of those is $13.59.
Yeah.
And so if we got 100 of them, we certainly.
We've already ordered and received 50 of them, and that was
Okay.
the price.
Okay. So then for signage up above, which is the 5,350, we're basically looking at not spending that amount of money.
We've already spent 1350.
Right.
So another 50 would be another 1350, plus some large signs. Don't know the exact cost of that yet.
Okay.
So
So
just
we
trying
could
to-
be possibly up to 5350.
Yeah, and if I could add with the larger project signs, which maybe are on the scale of the monitor behind you,
Okay.
staff and engineering would know probably better than anyone that once that project is triggered, fire station renovation where a sign is going to be posted for a year, that becomes part of the project schedule. And is that a $200 sign, a $500 sign, whatever the cost of fabricating and installing it would just coincide with the project work done by the GCs.
For a major project, we could actually ask the contractor to provide that at their cost of the project, and we would just need approval of what that sign would look like, instead of doing a separate sign from Measure J.
Yeah, and similar to the ones that have been done before by the city.
Right, but it
with
would be more
acknowledgement of Measure
robust
J.
as now as a, yeah.
Yeah, even better, and I think that's why we just had one category of signage, because there's probably going to be a little give and take depending upon which projects are undertaken and what signage seems to be appropriate.
Commissioner Craig.
When I had mentioned at the last meeting, I went to Desert Promotional, and they made this up as a proposal. I'm going to pass these for you to pass. They're 14 feet tall. They're washable. There's a whole, it's suitable, it's 4-ounce polyester flag, high resolution, scratch resistant and washable. These come with the poles and everything. And I look at it that if I was driving down any street in the city and it was being paved and I saw this flag waving, Measure J at work, that I can see it everywhere I'm driving in the city. And the price on these are $109 each. And that includes the pole, the 14-foot banner. These are seen all over town from different businesses and different organizations. The thing I liked about it was, that made me think about it, was that it's visually seen anywhere you look because it's so high and tall. And it's bright colors of the Measure J, so it just, it's something else to.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
How
Commissioner
are they,
Bernstein.
installed or held up?
They go into the ground 2 feet is the connection piece that goes into the ground.
And the whole thing can be reused?
It can be reused over and over and over again. It's, I just looked at it as something that, because it's reusable and they can be stored and they can be moved from street to street to street as the streets are being done. I just asked him, I said, give me a price on 25 of them, just to get an idea. And with tax, they were $109 each. And it's printed on both sides of it. So,
Okay, if you could let us have a look at the bid, I mean, that could fit under the category of signage, we'll just have to look
Yeah.
at it and see.
Okay.
Right, but for $5,000, that's 50 signs, so, I don't know if that's enough, but, it's a start. But that's about $5,000 for 50 signs.
but I felt that they would last, and by the fact that there was the number of ones that were made in 2014-15, and we had 3 or 4 that we were able to wash and clean to use last year, this seemed like something to me that this will have more longevity because they're washable and they're usable over and over again.
Well, yeah, to a certain point, but nothing lasts forever. And, they'll get lost and stolen and ripped and defaced and just like any other kind of sign. So I don't think we can say that would be forever. I think, but if we went this route, we might need to do like 50 a year because, if you have them on a street, some of these streets, you might need 3 or 4 or 5 on the street, just instead of just one. But the other thing is that I think it's a great idea. I'm just not sure that they're applicable everywhere, and I don't know if people, if see it driving down the street. I don't know if you get the connection that the street has anything to do with the flapping thing in the breeze, but maybe.
Well, it says Measure J at work.
Yeah, but you don't know what it's at work doing, so that's the other problem. Yeah, I guess if you put it in front of a building, it's okay.
I think it's probably the same with
Yeah,
almost,
yeah,
with almost
yeah.
any project, and I wouldn't start any of these signs with a huge amount, if
Right,
you could
right.
see how they work and how they last.
Right,
And then the question is
Right.
whether, I mean, what you can actually get from the contractors, because if it's in their budget to do it, or
Right.
if they have to at least, I assume install it, but,
right.
Yeah, the contractor, we can put in the specifications and ask them to provide a project sign, and that project sign takes the form of whatever we want it to
Right,
take.
right.
So that, and maybe one of these would really announce Measure J.
I mean, the medallions are permanent, and that's the thing I like about them, and you actually put them in the sidewalk, you put them on a building, you put them on the road. So they pretty much stay, but, obviously with $10,000, we don't have a lot of money, so I guess we have to divvy it up somehow. But, I think, as being a member of the subcommittee, I think basically what we're really doing here is sort of doing a rough budget and dividing the $10,000, and I'm not sure we should get bogged down into, I know that, nobody's talked about them, but I know at some point in time, when Measure J was doing things, there were signs that weren't much bigger than this. They were on little wire that said Measure J at work, and they were by a road when the road was being done. Now, I don't know whatever happened to those, but they would stay up there for like a week or two while the paving was being done, and then they disappeared, just like a political sign disappeared. So that's what I was sort of thinking when you paved the street. But permanently, maybe it needs something in the street.
Commissioner Soto?
Yeah, so I think this is an exciting opportunity that we're able to have this communications budget, and I would encourage us to think of it as, this is like a pilot year. We're gonna
Right.
see what's gonna work, we're gonna see what people respond to, like, we shouldn't do a ton of money without any consumer feedback or resident feedback as to what they like, and, I think this is a good year to get those impressions back, and so, but I'm loving all these ideas. I just think a year from now, we're gonna have a lot more information about what people respond to.
You're right.
Yeah, I mean, this is, presumably, we would be able to ask for this budget every year, and it seems like a reasonable mix between permanent and semi-permanent, temporary things that move around. And my only recommendation would be, if you're looking at things that we move around, whether it's those plastic signs or these, I think, these are a great option, or maybe it's a combination of them. And then I think the last question is, how much of it, even though we have the budget, can we get the contractor to commit to? Because for them to add a few hundred, $100, $200 at the project is probably nothing, but it'll add up.
Right, so for the mobile or the linear projects, i.e. the pavement reconstructions, those generally we don't ask contractors to provide signs because they're moving all over the place. I would think a combination of the plastic signs and the banners, in some fashion would work because they're able to grab them and move them with them, and we can ask them to do that for us. And the imprint in the sidewalk, we have a sidewalk project starting, so that would work, and you can see how that works and how it looks and see if it's feasible. Maybe you buy one and try that. So we have 2 projects that you can try these things on for the first year. And it's an ideal time to buy them and put them down to see what works.
And projects that we just finished, like the fire station and, let's say, Wellwood, or, I don't know, I'm trying to think of buildings. Could we try the medallions too and
Right,
see how
right,
people
so-
feel about those?
So you have the police station that's complete, so I would put a medallion at the police station with their permission, of course. And then the fire station actually has a 24 by 30 plaque with Measure J on it. So that one, I think, has enough, it will have enough of Measure J permanent.
And just for a little supplemental information, you'll see there under the logos, I've included an installation bit. That is a concrete drill bit that is to the exact same size as the medallion. So you can retrofit by adding the medallion, even though the concrete's already been poured.
So it cuts out the circle.
Yep. And then you just use Quickcrete, and there's a little anchor, and it just goes down in there, and you can, like I said, retrofit it to an existing project.
Commissioner Footer.
I would like to ask, how do you determine where these will go? Every sidewalk that you build, or? Thank you, Jim. Or, like David said, on specific buildings, or
So-
how do you
yeah,
make that
Well, that's a good
determination?
question, right? The medallions would probably go on a fixed structure of building. The
Mm-hmm.
imprints are gonna go on sidewalk, but I don't know if that's gonna be every,
Yeah.
block, because they vary in lengths
Mm-hmm.
and location, so, I don't know. I would be up for any suggestion. Generally, you see them
To be discussed. and
Right.
Well,
determined.
you kind of see them generally where the ADA slope
on a
is to the.
ramp, right, on a ramp and on the curb, right.
Yeah,
So you don't
like
see them
pretty much at
printed-
every
Yeah,
road.
Yeah, you don't see them printed on the sidewalk as you go along, so we'll have
That's
to
fine.
pick, and it'll be one where if no one knows, you'll have to tell them it's right at that corner.
So, speaking of sidewalks, I have a question. I noticed something yesterday or the day before on a ADA ramp that's been redone on North Indian Canyon that was at across from Hotel Zoso on the plaza. And there's a little brass plaque that says something like, private way.
Yes.
You could be, some kind of thing, and it's embedded in the sidewalk. I'm curious to know, what is that and how did that get there?
I saw that also yesterday.
Yeah.
It's
so-
in front
so-
of Bill's Pizza.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
a big portion of La Plaza is private property, actually. And this was kind of the fad that, I forgot what period of time it was. I think it was in the 30s and 40s that the private property owners would put these medallions to mark that this is private property, and the city has an easement to use as pedestrian passageway. But this was very common in Hollywood, and then as the movie stars came to play in Palm Springs, they took this practice over. But what the private property owners used to do would tell the famous people that we can escort the paparazzi and those types of people off of their private property so that you can enjoy your lifestyle out here in Palm Springs, and we have the right to escort people off our private property. And it's just because I worked on Hollywood Boulevard, and but there was a period of time where this was put everywhere to mark where the property line was. And it basically is saying that you have permission to walk on this sidewalk, even though it's our private property. And when an incident occurred, they were called the police to escort people that they didn't want off their property.
So those plaques have been there and they were just taken off and put in the new sidewalk? Must be, because these were just poured, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is interesting. I've never noticed this
Yeah.
before.
Right,
They usually put it back where the property line is.
Ah,
And so,
okay.
yeah.
So it's been there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lass and your subcommittee. Anything else?
Do we need
Or
to
do we
adopt the
vote?
budget?
Okay. And we're basically letting you decide basically on the signage at this, or you'll bring it back to us as far as what gets
I
ordered?
think it'll be a
Okay.
consultative
All right.
process.
Right now, we've got the double-sided signs, so that's great. Okay, do we have a motion to adopt this budget?
I move that we adopt the budget as presented.
And
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, can I add?
Good job.
Jim, can I add something? So now that you approved the stamped concrete imprint, our contractor, we're having a pre-construction meeting next week. So I don't know, is this something you would order or the committee would order? How?
I would, if I might, if this is the way I got it, they have to be approved as a city vendor before we can order? Is that the case?
I can forward the link to the vendor so they can just register with the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can register through our by-speed program that we have, and they just register as a vendor, and they submit the necessary documents, and then we can go ahead and
Okay, and
start
so I'll do
business.
that, I'll forward that, that we can do right away, and then the same with the Medallion Company.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, so just expedite that
Okay.
one if you can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. The Library Subcommittee update, and the library has been very active lately. We'll try to keep this, or please keep this related to Measure J, please.
Well, I was going to ask Naomi, Commissioner Soto, if she wanted to report on the building committee, and then I can talk a little bit about the Board of Trustees meeting that we were asked to come to last month.
Yeah, so as I mentioned last month, Councilmember Holst asked me to be on the building committee, which was reviewing essentially just the land options for a new library. There was ultimately 5 sites that were for consideration. 2 were downtown, 2 were nearish to where the library currently is, its current site in Sunrise Park, and then the COD. And then the 5th one was near the tribe headquarters off of Dinah Shore. So we went through a very thorough process of coming up with criteria to review each of those. Ultimately, at the end, which was last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know, it's a blur. The committee decided that the library should stay in Sunrise Park was our final recommendation, with the strong caveat that the city should definitely consider making a master plan for Sunrise Park to be a key component as to how the library would be in the park. So some of the feedback was there's, very strategic and smart neighbors next to the library. So the Boys and Girls Club, the Mizell Center, the high school's right there, the swim center. But the way the park is currently designed, the different corners can feel really sequestered, and they don't necessarily kind of live, cohabitate, and there isn't as much synergy with the different parts of the park as would be ideal. So that would be that was a big part of our recommendation, that it's not just about the library, it's about Sunrise Park altogether. The other thing that we also mentioned as well, and this would be for whatever group moves forward with the library, is that we're not just recommending, a straight renovation of things that need to be repaired, which there are quite a few, but that they should really kind of dream big and think of how you can, whether that it's expanding or renovating in a way that honors the history of the building, but at the same time, is kind of a very futuristic, forward-thinking type library that is, deserving of the residents of Palm Springs. And so, kind of hearing a lot of the feedback from the community that they didn't want to leave the current location, but at the same time, like, how can we listen to them, honor them, and also look ahead too? So that's our final recommendation. It goes to the city on the 23rd, to the city council, where they will ultimately make their final recommendation. Some of the feedback, and I don't know if Commissioner Gray, if you were going to mention it, from the trustees, it seemed like they were really hoping for it to be downtown. And just to kind of quickly note, some of the feedback, some of the discussion that ultimately we decided the 2 downtown options weren't ideal. There was Lot G near the airport, or not there, near the Art Museum, and then another one at Palm Canyon and Stevens. And then both of those, especially the one by the Art Museum, they were just too small for kind of the size of the library that we're thinking of, and being on kind of smaller side roads would really be some real traffic logistical nightmares. So it just felt that the sites that we were given to consider for downtown were not ideal. And that's ultimately, and the parking, even at the one on Palm Canyon, would have been an issue too. So, that's kind of why we didn't look at those. So, but definitely come if anybody has any other thoughts. The city council meeting on the 23rd, I'm sure there'll be a lot more community feedback from there.
Yeah, so, it's my understanding that's a public hearing, and then that they will listen and so forth, and maybe make a final decision in November, but anyway.
Decide before the new council members.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
The Board of Trustees, they have to go along with this recommendation, or they could?
Good point. There was a section in the report where they were able to give feedback and their own comments, and so that's the report that will be seen, the city council will see, will include their dissent essentially from what the building committee recommended.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process, basically, as I understand it, was that the trustees in the city charged this committee to come up with a recommendation, and the trustees made their comments, but they weren't going to, they are not changing the decision because they gave the authority to this other committee. So basically, whether or not, I don't know what will happen after that, it's up to city council. So for whatever reason, there were a lot of Measure J things put on discussion at the last Board of Trustees meeting. And so I asked other members if they wish to, library subcommittee members, if they wish to attend. Commissioner Soto attended, myself, Commissioner Gazan. And it really kind of boiled down to more or less process rather than anything else, that the trustees wanted some clarification on process regarding funds that either had already been allocated or were future funds. So I think probably now they are just going to work directly with city staff to have those projects either reimbursed out of Measure J funds, which we've already allocated, or come back to us should a project need extra funds. And the only one that might have that issue is the Frey building, apparently, in that we had given them $300,000 and now they think the project might be around $400,000, but it's my understanding, and Don can correct me, that the Wellwood patio and the Frey building are going to be bid at sort of the same time. The RFR is going to go out same time or something like that. You can correct me on that. But somehow at the same meeting, they were going to, you somehow bundled those two projects, which I wasn't sure about.
No, it was just two separate items probably would land on the same council meeting to get approved.
Yeah,
that was the.
I'm misunderstood.
Yeah.
So, so I don't really think that there's any other thing that we will be doing at this point, but obviously, I would imagine after City Council approves or makes their final recommendation, then the next process would be that the library will be then going out with funds that we've already allocated to do the building plan with a consultant architect, and then eventually that would then go into architectural rendering. So that's there where that $1 million some odd dollars is going to have to be spent. But at this point, they're nowhere near using anywhere near those kinds of funds. So I don't think we need to worry too much. But obviously, once they have an estimated cost on the building, then we will have more clarity as to how much funding they will need over X amount of years. I don't know if you have any questions, but.
This one, so for the money that we already allocated, the 1.4, I guess this year, I mean, are they obligated, or we can just ask them to report back how they spent it? Next question, are they obligated, or if not, can we just ask?
It was my understanding at that meeting, they wanted to ask Measure J for even more money, for the future building construction. And it was put to them, you need to spend the money we already gave you first. I mean, and, so that other projects can get funded through Measure J. And then once, some kind of concept and we have construction estimates, that would be more the appropriate time to come back to Measure J or whoever, and staff will definitely work with the different departments. But was that your understanding?
Well, yeah, my understanding is that basically as finance gets these bills, they're going to be coming off of this line item. So the finance department can tell us, well, they spent the money on whatever they spent it on. And we know that they're going to spend, they've already spent some money on what they've already done. So those bills are going to be coming up against this money we've allocated. So until those bills are at the finance department, I don't know that there's a whole lot more for them to come and report. I mean, they obviously are done with the current contract for this building site plan, and now that there's money, I don't know how much that cost, but it was, I don't remember.
Commissioner Soto?
Yeah, and I was also there, and Commissioner Gray I had to step out, so he has the full vision or understanding of some of those comments, but I did want to kind of echo what Don was just saying, where it's my impression that the parts of the meeting that I heard was there might be some kind of small changes as to what they were going to use Measure J funds for, but it was still, there was still money on the table that we had approved to them, and they were thinking of coming back to making sure that they could use it for something else, and we were saying, we've already, we don't need to kind of look at every single recommendation, just use the money that has been approved. You know what the library needs, you know where it needs to go, just use it, and then we understand there's probably going to be more requests, but we're probably going to assume that you've already spent what's been approved already.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they got bogged down into whether it was, could they use this money because they called it strategic planning, and then this other one called it, something else. And, when you hire a consultant, that's what we ask, that's what we assume this building planning money is for. We have very broad category, and the next time they hire a consultant, it might be a program, blah, blah, blah. Well, they don't need to come back and ask us unless it goes over the 1 point whatever million that they need to get the program off the ground.
Yeah, basically, council needs to approve, they can move forward. What we want them to do is use that money to get them to the point of definition of what the heck they're going to be doing, and that way they can start their own capital campaign to raise money. So, because the public isn't going to get behind this until the public sees, oh, this is what it's going to look like, or this is what's happening, then they can start to raise money. They can maybe, and they will, come back to Measure J for money as well, and I think we want to see too, get to that point, then we can see what it is, and yes, it's a great community project. We might be behind it, but
Where the commission might get an insight onto what's going on is when contracts are awarded, council awards those contracts, and they come in, anything above 25,000 goes to council. So if there's a library project or an award of some sort of engineering or concept, it will go to the city council, and you'll be able to see this is where the money is going to.
Right, but for instance, the Wellwood patio project, which they seem to think might need Measure J funds, Don said, no, there are other capital funds that's not coming out of Measure J. But that's still going to be, I don't know, it's way over $25,000, so it's going to go to city council. If people want to know what's happening, they can find out. But when a report is in there, it always says where the money's coming from. Mm-hmm. So obviously, if it's a Measure J thing, then we could be informed of that, but we would know that when city council does it.
A question, is the Fry building coming out of your Major J, or is that city funding to redo the Fry building?
That was Measure J, like 300, wasn't it?
We had appropriated money several years ago, and so in April of this year, we reallocated that money, and we reallocated 300,000 to the Fray and, I don't know, some amount of money for what they just did, and their planning part. And so the estimates are that the Fray may go over that, but whether or not that needs Measure J funds or whether the city will find other funding, we don't know at this point, and that would be the city's decision.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the funding that was provided by Measure J for the library is to go towards the new construction of the library and not any other funding. If they want us to use the money for something else, they would have to come back. If they, let's say, oh, we need 2,000 library books, they would have to come back to you for different uses other than for the construction of a new library, just to clarify. Okay, thank you.
But that could include a consultant on
Yeah,
planning.
this is all programming, really, that they've got to now, once council moves forward, they've got to get their ducks in a row, program, then look at hiring an engineering firm to assess, everything and move on from there.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Our final,
There's one other question, and maybe Ariana can answer this question, but when I was trying to remember who was the library subcommittee, there was some uncertainty. So, Ariana, could you tell us who you think is on this subcommittee?
I know I sent you an email.
Yeah, you had said, I know at the last meeting, Jeff, Commissioner Bernstein,
I know we were under the impression that Commissioner Soto was part of it.
and I was too.
And I don't have her down as being appointed.
I think it was Bernstein, was it Linda?
No,
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 No.
not here yet.
not here yet.
it was
Commissioner
Robin,
Robin,
me.
Gray.
Sent you the email, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I
Yeah,
did
I-
see your
I
email
looked at it,
too.
and I referred to it.
It could have been I wasn't on it the first year.
I thought you joined, or
I
not?
think it was,
There was a downtown park committee,
Oh,
which
Right, which kind of
No.
fizzled.
We
So
have
it's switched.
Commissioner Gray, Robin, and Bernstein for the library.
what was that?
And previously Commissioner Johnson, that's the library.
So we can have up to 4, correct?
Correct.
I would like to ask Commissioner Soto to be on it because she's been involved.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I will definitely second that. Do we need to vote on that, or is that just?
No. just
Okay.
You can appoint.
Okay, good deal.
Thank you. That will, and in the future, if I get these emails, I'm going to try to forward them. I knew you weren't here, and so that's why I kind of did it, because the email came from the library director, and it's sort of a panic. And I was trying to notify everyone who was on the committee in case they wished to go to the meeting, which was in like 2 days, so.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. Our final new business item, and I have a few comments on this, is the discussion on new hotspots projects, which is really more of an idea and outreach recommendation. I want to share the past commission. They kind of did away with outreach as far as community projects. And I think some of it was just an overwhelming amount of information, or maybe even just a lack of information, that people didn't step forward. For whatever reasons, they did not feel that that was the most prudent route or way to go, that they felt the other commissions within the city were the best way to look at the needs from the community, and that's looking at the Arts Commission, Parks and Recreation. Maybe we could throw in 1PS as a good collector site for ideas. Obviously, Hotspots came out of 1PS, which was a great community project. So I throw that out there as something we can discuss. I'm not saying that that's my view completely, but I think it took out a lot of, I don't know. It seemed that they were very unanimous and very stern on that decision-making as far as community projects and identifying them. So obviously, they had their reasoning. And we're a whole new commission, and we can definitely do something different. I actually want to address one of the public comments earlier. I don't know if this is legal to do, but I commend that they did the form, and I hope that, I've been to this rodeo with Farrell. I hope that staff will work with the Warm Sands neighborhood and pursue a really prudent, and good, you're still here, a prudent solution. And as I know with Farrell, you don't always get everything, but hopefully something good will come out of that, and you can identify the cost associated with that. As it relates to Measure J, and that's why I bring it up, I don't know that that warrants being under a community project. It could, but it could definitely warrant being on our list of capital projects to look at in the new year as we look at that laundry list of capital projects. And I think pedestrian safety has always been a pretty important issue for this commission. And I know with Farrell, we got the monies through other sources, and it didn't have to go through Measure J. I know doing a crosswalk might be more expensive. I'm not, I don't know all of that, and depends on what that crosswalk looks like, and that can come out of your work groups, whether it should have lighting or not. And so I would say definitely get with that neighborhood, do that homework, and it can, we would strongly look at that as a consideration on our list.
Right. Before it gets to Measure J, we would have fully vetted what can happen on Ramon Road.
Sure.
We won't bring a project just to say we're putting crosswalks on Ramon
Right,
Road. We
right.
want to truly go through the process, and it's a long process, but you've done the correct thing. The process will start. I know 1PS has also mentioned that they're interested in the crosswalk on Ramon Road, so there is a lot of movement and community, requests. So we are aware of it, and we're going to look at everything and move it forward as it's appropriate.
Yeah. And I don't live in that neighborhood, but I think we can all agree that we drive Ramon. It's one of the busiest arteries in the city. That stretches very high speed. It's dark. There have been accidents resulting in death on that stretch of Ramon, I think at least more than once. So I think it's a worthy project. This isn't just some vanity project. This is, I think, important. So I commend that neighborhood that they are moving forward, and hopefully they'll work quickly with your group and we'll come up with a solution. That's really all I have. I'll open it up to the commission as far as outreach and ideas.
Just quickly, based off of Joel, what you're saying around the process, so considering that the project hasn't been kind of vetted and viability and recommendations, should it be something that by the time that's done, it would be more appropriate to do it as a capital project next year, or should we kind of keep it as a possible live option for a community project this year?
For this year, if you wanted to call it a community project, you could maybe include it, but it really would be for a future project to come. I mean, it's way too early to determine what the shape of that would take and how much money would be needed. So it's too early in the process to make that decision.
And I wanted to add too real quickly, in regards to the restroom request too, and I've heard issues with the James O. Jesse Park. I guess that too, I probably would want to see more on the capital list, and then from there, we can decide if, as a commission, if it makes sense for this next year that $1 million goes towards parks. $1 million is not going to build a restroom, unfortunately. I don't know what that kind of cost estimate would be. and even if it's feasible, as far as getting the plumbing and everything to those sites. So, and that, again, that could be a very viable, I like the two ideas that have come to us. I think they're very well thought out, and I think this is the kind of feedback that we want to see from the community. And what I like is all three of these ideas are all in three different districts, and, it's kind of spreading the wealth, so.
I'd like to make a suggestion that if we just went around the table and every commissioner would sort of give their thought on what they think would be a good way to reach out, and because although I agree with some of what you've said, I'd like to hear from everyone, but I do think that my concerns really are that without a public call, there are many places and people who don't speak out. So it's kind of like the squeaky wheel is going to get the money because these people took the initiative and came. But if you went to somebody else and said, oh, da-da-da-da, and they would say, well, I didn't know I could do that. So I just think maybe we just want to have either a meeting where people could come and talk to us and publicize it that way, or we have some sort of process that's a little bit more forthright, either on the website or some way so that people can bring forth ideas. And when I think of a community project, I think that's anything that somebody brings forth that isn't brought to us directly from the city. So it could be what we've heard so far. Obviously, we heard last year, a huge drainage project that was going to cost millions and millions of dollars. Well, that was still brought to our attention, and it's probably not going to happen immediately, but at least we know about it. And so I guess my concern is that if we just kind of do it piecemeal, I feel like it's been a long time since Measure J has really kind of done an open call, and I wouldn't want it every meeting, but I do think we need to have a process, and I don't know what the process would be, but that's what I'd like to see.
I'd like to respond, and maybe this is the way of doing the round the table, the knights and the knightesses of the round table. I think that the mechanism that the two of you are talking about, for me, it fits very squarely in Measure J solicits input from each of the commissions and the neighborhood organizations. Those smaller groups function as a clearinghouse for the public to make their requests known. That's a mechanism that's functional, which might not be as widely reaching as knocking on every door in the community, but it's a mechanism that exists. And if over the course of the next 60, 90 days, it's possible for Measure J as an organization to knock on the organizational counterpart of Parks and Recs or the neighborhood organizations collectively through Denise Goolsby's umbrella with Kathy Cohn, we're able to reach and ask the question of what is your priority, and this is where I really think, for me personally, this is where the substance is. What are your priorities for the big ticket projects that last cycle we addressed and focused on versus some of the smaller items like, do you need some light bulbs for a park? Do you need a gym floor? That in the last cycle didn't make it because a $50,000 or $20,000 project just doesn't cut it when we're focusing on 5 or 6 important projects. And I think as a set aside for the community work where we carve out $1 million, that helps to solve that dilemma. Long and the short of it, my response to the two of you, with your input, is the way to do that is to go through the chambers that exist already, those mechanisms that exist already.
I'm sorry. So I agree with you, and the only addition I would have is to let people know if they're not on one of those things, how they can do it. So whether it's this, brochures like this, or, I mean, the city now is mailing a quarterly mailer, right, to the whole city. What? Well, the one came out recently, and I think they're doing it quarterly. Right, and I think they will include a Measure J on every single one. That was, this was the discussion, I think Dr. Reddy said, you don't have to budget to do a direct mailer, because we're gonna do a mailer quarterly, and we'll include something in Measure J. So one of the things to add to that, which will make sure that they add on that, if you have an idea, here's the, either go fill out a community action request form, or go to your neighborhood organization. Or
Yeah,
come to a meeting.
Right, 'cause I think the sort of the, if you will, the inverse of that is, let's ask 40,000 people to come to a Measure J meeting. It's just, that of course is impractical, but the filtering through, here's the communication, the filtering through these organizations that exist already that can act as a springboard for communication to us, with us.
Well, they have the right to come here, and if you just, I think if you put it in a newsletter saying you have the right to make public comment, you will not get 40,000 people, you'll get the same 5 people who have already.
Yeah, my point being from the digesting of input, it would be, it's a stretch to expect that we could be effective that way.
And Ariana, did we do sort of a, was it an email campaign or something several years ago? Is that what the early commission did?
For the last community projects?
Yeah, was it like a poll or something? I don't know. I feel like
For the last request, when they requested input from the public, it was through our website. They would, kind of like a jot form, and they would submit, we would do our questionnaire, and then they would just submit their responses and email it, and then we would be able to download that and filter it, on a spreadsheet.
But to your point, there was hard lessons learned from that that could be gained from the previous commission.
Well, one other kind of thought too is maybe the approach might have a little bit of both. I mean, you might,
We can
for
do the
example,
same.
have things coming in through the website, and then if it's in a particular area, we refer it to that neighborhood association, say, what do you think about that? And you kind of, again, to try to filter a little bit, otherwise it can be pretty overwhelming, I think.
Well, we can do something similar and maybe have one more designated for other commissions to submit their requests, and then one for the public as an individual. We do the categories, and then it it populates, but it sorts itself, yes. It auto sorts.
So if you go to commissions, not every commission is a capital commission or board. So I don't know that we have to go to all of them, but it would be helpful in my head to know what ones. Obviously, does the airport have to come to us? Does, Parks and Rec people have talked a lot about. Obviously, we know the library. Obviously, we know, but what about sustainability? They don't do capital, I don't think. So
They do.
but I don't know if they do. So it's interesting to me. They do? Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Human rights, do they do capital? Maybe not, I don't know. So I just don't know how I don't want to go out to commissions and then have a commission say, well, they never came to us, but which ones are capital and which ones aren't? And so but I guess I just would like us to, if we're going to do it that way, then just send an official notice to everybody. I don't know what that official notice would be, but.
Commissioner Soto.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I appreciate this opportunity to have a broader conversation about this. So I would, invitation to everybody, I think I would hope that we can expand that vision. I understand that there might be some logistical challenges. Community outreach and dialogue is not easy like on its face. It's something that requires a lot of effort, but I think there's a lot of value in it. I would recommend that we look at the CVRA working group of last year. They did a lot of community outreach, and we got a lot of great feedback as to what they wanted to see in the city elections. It was feedback from communities that were rarely heard that are going to be benefiting directly from this district. Some of those strategies, outreach strategies, there were evening meetings, there was translators, there was reaching out to people multiple times. I'm not saying that we have the capacity to do that at all. I'm not even saying we should do that every year. Maybe it's something we do every 2 or 3 years. But I don't think the possibility of being overwhelmed should be a complete barrier to trying to have ongoing conversation with community members. So I don't know, maybe there is kind of some kind of combined model where we're reaching people outside of working hours, where we're reaching, maybe it's a combination of a survey, and then we're going to review the survey results every 2 years, 3 years. There's some other models where we might be gathering more community feedback that is useful for us on a longer period of time. I just did a quick scan of the commissions. I only saw 2 that happened after 4 o'clock, ours and one other one. All the other ones are in the morning or at 1:30. These are really hard meetings to get to if you're working, or if you have children at home and you can't find daycare and childcare. Those are real logistical barriers, but those are people who are going to parks. Those are people who are walking their kids on strollers on sidewalks, and that input is greatly valuable for us, like I said, over a long period of time. So I hope that there's some combined model that we could do where we're gathering community feedback and also utilizing the infrastructure that we have in place with the city staff and the commissions that we have in place.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Craig.
I found that the 1PS, which is over 47 neighborhoods now, at those monthly meetings, the chief of police, the fire chief, the city council member, Denise Goolsby, there's at least 15 people that are speaking at each meeting. And the public is there, and a lot of people from the public attend the 1PS meetings, and they are there for public comments. I remember things like the Street of Ramon being discussed when there was a fatality 2 years ago. Oddly enough, one of the members of the group brought up a problem at a specific street, and 2 days later, her sister was killed at that crosswalk. And that's when they got Caltrans involved to put up a signal. But a lot of information is really disseminated at those meetings, because then Denise puts out every Thursday a full explanation of everything going on. And I live at Canyon Sands, and at our HOA, she puts out to everybody who lives there everything that Denise put out to us. So these kind of things really do get the word out to people to know what's going on, or they can come and they can speak. I found that more constructive people have come with constructive comments or help to the 1PS meetings than the people who come to city council meetings, who get up and speak. So I think that's an avenue that we can expand upon more, or maybe Chairman Gonzalez can be on that agenda to speak monthly about people can come here, your ideas, your suggestions to bring about, to get the public out there. The same way I look at this brochure that we were just given today, I'm hoping we can have these printed, and at the picnic in March, that we pass out tons of these to people, because we needed more material. And this is a lot of explanation. Last year, people came to the Measure J booth. They asked, what is this? What do you do?
Yeah.
They really did. So this is a wonderful new piece of material, I'm glad to see. But I think our focus is the communication to the community of, we're here, we can help. Maybe things that are, maybe we should consider, and I'm picking a number, and I don't mean to, just that number, maybe $1 million a year, we should say goes to anything under, for 50,000 or less, where neighborhoods or situations come to us where they need something done, and it isn't $1 million to be done. I don't know, I could be shooting in the dark on that. But when I hear this gentleman today speak about the street Ramon, this has been out there for a while with people, and it's something I think we really need to address these kind of things more. But this is a start, and all the signs that you're talking about, Commissioner Robin, this is going to put Measure J back in a position that people, I hope, will start answering, who are these people and what do they do? Because we've realized in the last few years, nobody knows what it is anymore.
I like your idea because you have a process in process. But I would concur with you because I'm not sure communities realize what they can ask for. If you ask me about a Major J project, I'm thinking of the downtown park and big ticket items. So perhaps along with this, we need to tell communities, you know, smaller projects can come forward, particularly safety or those kinds of things, because I really don't know what our community could ask for from you, and I'm sure there's something they could. So I think it's publicizing what people can do here. Small things can be done by Major J. They're not all big capital projects. So I support the ideas we have here, but we need to let people know, sort of give a list of things that are smaller projects, and maybe that lights a candle under somebody to say, yeah, we could do that. But I think, David, I'm not sure, Commissioner David, I'm not sure if you're concerned about every person having a voice. I seem to hear that it's not the people who know their way here, but the common guy, like this young man in the audience, who comes to really present a problem. Is that your concern a little bit?
Well, I think my concern is that the same thing as Commissioner Soto. I would bet that if I ask all of my neighbors what Measure J is, they wouldn't know. I would bet they don't know what 1PS is. They don't know very much. They know what the grocery store is, and they know kind of if the street is paved and if the trash isn't picked up, but they really don't, they're not very terribly involved. And part of it is because they have to get up and go somewhere and do something. That's very difficult for most people. They just, there are probably 1,000 people in this city who are very involved. And I see those same 1,000 people at everything. But there's 43,000 people I don't see at all. They're in their cars going about their daily business. And what I'm concerned a little bit about is, we are spending taxpayer money, and I want to be as transparent about that and let people know that if they have an idea, then they should be able to do it. I also think all these ideas are good. I also think that if people know that, I'm going to pick a month, let's say in March is when we will hear all suggestions, unless you have a crisis, fine. But give people time to think about it, be prepared about it. The commissions could do it, the boards can do it, general person can do it, but have a time at least once every 2 years maybe, because we might get a lot, where people know, oh, that's when I'm supposed to come. That's when I'm supposed to do something. That's when I'm supposed to write a letter or fill out a form or whatever we ask them to do. Because if it's just any old time, that sort of feels very nebulous to me, and I could do it next week or I could not, and I don't know when the meeting was, and I don't know. That's just me.
Commissioner LaBranche, do you have any, we don't want to leave you out of this discussion.
I feel as though there's a lot of words, verbiage, concepts that are perhaps take a little bit of time to wrap my head around. You guys have been in this, I don't know how long any of you people have been on this commission. I'm brand new to this. And so I feel as though I wish that there was a way of an introduction to new members on this commission so that we get even just a little bit of a step ahead so I know, since I'm new to the whole thing. I know you are as well, but still, you have experience with these things in the city here, I think. I just wish that there was a way to include new members so that, it would take some, somebody come up with a suggestion on how just to bring new people up to speed so that we know what the process is. I mean, we have people coming to the community, and the capital improvement program I was on was in a very, very small town where I come from, and we had the police department and we had the highway come to us, and those are the ones that needed capital improvement. But in terms of involving the citizens and all that, I always would have thought that the types of questions that these people are coming would go to the city council, present it to the city council. What's the process? Does it start here? Does a capital improvement start here? Is it divided up between the city council, or is this the funnel that everything goes through? Or do they refer it back to us here? Because I'm really lost as to, at this point, I hate to say it, I see what this is for, but I'm just having a hard time understanding the process. And I feel a little bit like if something doesn't break, I'm just occupying a seat, and I'm not interested in doing that, so I don't know. And another thing, it seems as if this has been around since, 2013? And it's, excuse me for saying this, and I mean this with all due respect to every one of you and to this commission and this board, is it reinventing itself all the time? It seems to me the process should have been pretty much nailed down at some point in time, or is the turnover in the membership so great that every time, we're starting a new year, and now it seems like policy is being discussed, and I'm just a little confused by that. What I perceive, and I could be wrong, but it seems as if you're still trying to nail down how does this board work. And those are my concerns. The major concern is I just see this as a real steep learning curve. If all it is osmosis, and a lot of the terms and a lot of the concepts you're talking about, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I feel a little bit left out, but perhaps that's my problem. I just don't know what the rest of your experiences have been, but I really feel as though if you get new people on board, they've got to have a little bit better grasp of what is going on here. This is a second meeting. I understand that, so I rest my case.
Great, thank you for that feedback, and we've all been in your position, and I'm happy to talk with you offline at some point too, to answer some questions. And as far as requests for projects, they come in from every possible angle that there is in this city. They can be initiated by a council member, they can be initiated through other commissions, staff can identify through the city manager's office projects. They can come in through the actual project site itself. The police can say, hey, our police department is horrible. We don't have good locker rooms for women police officers, blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. So all those things kind of funnel in from different directions. Typically, what we look at for this commission is we're going to be looking at a little bit in the next few months, a list of capital projects that are suggested by staff. We will not have enough money to cover that entire list, so we'll be voting on our priorities. And then we have this $1 million for community projects that is completely separate. And that is to our discretion of how we want to use that $1 million. I think the reason there's not been a good roadmap of how to use that $1 million is because for 3 years it was completely consumed by one project. So the hotspots, which was a project that took 3 years, $3 million over 3 years. It was fixing sidewalks where they didn't exist, adding stop signs. It was a bunch of hotspots identified by the community that had to do with pedestrian and bicycle safety. And
Are hotspots crisis areas, or are they any work in progress? What's a hotspot?
a hotspot is, like I said, it was identified by the community. It was brought forth through 1PS. They collectively put together a list of areas around the entire city that was missing sidewalks, needed a stop sign, the sidewalk was broken.
They were public safety.
They were all public safety issues. So they all kind of had a theme to it, and that took Measure J, that took us out of the game for 3 years. And then it was also decided, I think very early on, that the fourth year would go to parks. And it became sort of a referendum that that money went to the downtown park. So for 4 years, it's been a no-brainer. And now, this new commission, we're looking at, oh, we're through these projects, we need to now move forward. And we really don't have a lot presented to us at this point. So that is, and there's a roadmap, and you can look at that for each meeting. It kind of shows a little bit of what the purpose of each meeting. And the purpose for this month and November, I believe, was to kind of discuss how do we get the word out? And how do we want to handle this without maybe overwhelming ourselves as well? For the sake of melting in here, because we have no air conditioning,
But really, we're only talking about the $1 million community projects. We aren't talking about, anything.
we're not talking about anything else. So I say we table this for next month under old business. And I want us, next month, I want us to think about this. We can each present an idea and we'll vote on how we want to communicate this. So, and I took notes, and it looks like basically we want to communicate to commissions, to 1PS, possibly website outreach through the city website, and maybe potentially a special meeting that happens in the evenings. And then we can discuss how that communication should happen, like i.e. to the commissions. We did go to the 1PS last month. We presented to them, and we're happy to present them a challenge of, hey, let's do your outreach, funnel in.
That's great.
And then 1PS makes a recommendation to us, and they kind of filter it.
I mean, while we're sorting this out, my recommendation, if you're going to 1PS meetings, or if there's any other further collateral created, that we make it clear that the public can come to the meetings and/or submit things. You're still not gonna, it's not gonna get 40,000 people to show up, but at least if you're sending something out, or if it's in the city newsletter, to be transparent, should say, yes, they have the right to come here, and yes, they can submit a community action forum. And we can do that separate, whether we have a March big open forum or community things like Naomi, Commissioner Soto was saying as well. So I would just suggest that as we develop things, we make sure, or we go to community meetings, that we make sure it's mentioned.
Yeah.
It's on all collateral, there's an explicit invitation to come, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing for it to be a right, but to know that that's. Public's invited.
Yeah, and that's tough on a printed material because, you never know if our meetings are going to change or something, but, I mean, if there's a short shelf life on this, yeah, you could print that we meet the third
It can
Thursday
be on the
of every month.
website, and when
And
you
the
can.
website could definitely, because you can
and when
update that at
for
any
more
time.
information.
And also Channel 17
Yeah.
shows the time and the date of Measure J's meetings.
You have this on your.
Yeah, it's on,
Yeah.
One other thing that I'd like,
They don't read.
one other thing I'd like to request, and we got a little bit of feedback from staff, that in previous iterations of this, when we solicited proposals, that there were some hard lessons learned. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about those, so we don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, if we've learned some things in previous iterations of this that would be helpful, I would certainly like to hear about that as well.
Right, and we, the staff here, as far as engineering, we were not here to experience those the issues, but the previous commissioners would be very valuable to ask. Christine?
I can reach out to Christine Hammond. She's one that led the
Yeah.
last project and really.
Well, I can tell you what she told me was that, so the first, Measure J was brand new, wide net, right? Anybody could submit anything they wanted. They got about 268 submissions. The commission had to read all of the proposals, so you can imagine how a two-page submittal, how long that would take. One of her concerns was that, there were some suggestions that staff already knew about. It was already in the pipeline, it was already in the works. Other things is that, one of her comments was that everybody thought they were a traffic engineer. So when they asked for a stop sign and didn't get the stop sign, they were absolutely sure that that stop sign was needed. But, there are, studies that are done to make sure that those signs are warranted. Those studies cost money. And so just if staff were to say, hey, we already know that that stop sign's not warranted, we don't want to spend $3,000 on a study, that wasn't good enough. They wanted the study done so that it would say no, and that could be given to them. And so those are the kind of lessons that were learned over time. And so as the commission started to change, people had different ideas. Maybe we should start funding, get bigger bangs for our buck. So what Christine was saying is that why don't we go after grants that had matching funds? So for example, the city got $6 million worth of CVAG grants, but the city had to put up $2 million of matching funds. So that $2 million came from Measure J. So $2 million of Measure J funds brought in $6 million worth of grant money. And so that mix of commissioners thought that was a better use of their time and resources. So when you look at the list of completed projects, you'll see the early years, there were like, one project was $200, one project was $55, very little projects. And then as you go over the years, you'll see a smaller list of projects, but bigger dollar amounts. Again, now we have a different mix of commissioners. It's open to, how you felt. I mean, a lot of you ran or applied for this, saying that we needed to do more outreach, we needed to do, so the pendulum, in my view, is swinging back and forth. How intensive or how easy you want to make it, it's all up to you. We are here to support you, but if you're getting bogged down in all these applications and we have to do something with all that information. Like you said, it's probably going to be some mix of what's going on, but I believe the first Hotspots one really took a lot of time, that in their head dragged them to the other end of the pendulum, where it was, let's do something a little easier because we're exhausted from the first experience. And then most of those have cycled out, so you guys are a new commission. You can make it what you want it to be. We're happy to support you in whatever decision you make, but I don't want to skew you in either direction. I do agree with everything you said, some kind of a mix to get this $1 million, because this $1 million is at your discretion, and City Council at the last meeting, in the joint meeting, reaffirmed that we do want to give you that discretion on how to spend that $1 million the best way you feel fit for the community. So however that takes, whatever form it takes, we leave it up to you as a commission. So
Commissioner Craig, quickly.
I'll make it brief. Around 3.5, 4 years ago, Christine Hammond started going out, and she came to the Parks and Recreation Commission. I was the chairman at the time. Said, we'd like you to bring something to Measure J that you feel is really needed. And so we put together a proposal to redesign Sunrise Park because of the situation with the homeless that's going on. What could be done for the children, for the parks, everything that's going on there. And there were 14 or 15, this room was full, of organizations that came here with their proposals. And the commission listened to them all. They decided to pick two. Parks and Recreation was awarded $2 million over a period of 4 years. But there was a caveat put to it by one of the commissioners. Unless we need that $2 million for the downtown park. They then voted and said, we need it for the downtown park, forget the $2 million we just told you. And that's what happened. That's around 3.5 years ago. Am I right? So, but by her going out, it did stimulate when commissioners went to different organizations. and people started bringing proposals here, so that does work.
Great. I look forward to diving into this next month. Let's go outside in the 90-degree air where it's probably cooler. Any public comment? Okay, any staff member comments? Any commissioner comments?
Just to reiterate that I think we should invite Dr. Reddy to attend our next meeting.
So, Ariana, can we have that happen? All right,
We'll ask.
we can do the ask. We used to see him.
Yeah.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
I apologize for being late. I
Well, that's
was
okay.
in